The cha-RG hit my phone at 2:47 in the morning, 3 weeks after Leo was born, and I was standing in the kitchen trying to remember if I'd taken my pain medication or if the throbbing in my incision was just the ghost of the C-section that had sliced me open like a gift box nobody wanted. The baby was down, finally, after 2 hours of screaming that made my EARS ring, and Mark was asleep in the guest room because he'd had a long day at work, as if I'd just spent the afternoon at a spa. I swiped the notification open and STA read at the number until my eyes burned. $23,400 at Bellafina Closets. The name sounded like something that belonged in a perfume ad, not on my credit card statement. I blinked. Swiped again. The number didn't change. I called the bank first, because that's what you do when you think someone's stolen your identity and gone on a shopping spree in your name. The woman on the other end was patient, bless her, because I was not making sense. I was whispering into the phone like the baby might hear me and wake up, and my voice kept cracking because my throat was raw from the crying, the baby's crying, the crying that had become the soundtrack of my new life. "Ma'am," she said, "I'm showing the transaction was authorized. It was processed with a physical CA code." "Impossible," I said. "I've been in bed for 3 weeks. I haven't left this apartment. It was authorized online." The CARD number was manually entered. There's also a second re-verification through your mobile device. I looked at my phone. At the text messages I'd been ignoring for days because they were all from Bellafina, confirming delivery dates, installation windows, final measurements. I thought they were spam. I thought they were the universe playing some kind of joke on me. "I didn't authorize this," I said. "I'm sorry, ma'am. The system shows it was approved. I can place a fraud alert on your CARD. But before I do, I need to confirm. Are you certain no one in your household had access?" I hung up before she could finish the question. Because I was certain. I was dead certain. And I was also certain that Mark was the only other person in this house who knew my PIN, who knew the password to my banking app, who could log into my email and four-way RD the verification codes to his own phone while I lay in a hospital bed screaming into a pillow. I woke him up. I didn't see if he'd had a long day. I didn't see if he needed his beauty sleep or his golf game in the morning or whatever excuse he'd been using for the past 3 weeks to avoid doing any actual parenting. I urged into the guest room, turned on the overhead light, and stood there with my phone held out like a weapon. "Explain," I said. He squinted at me, rubbed his eyes, and then looked at the screen. And his face did this thing, this little twitch at the corner of his mouth, like he was trying to decide whether to lie or come clean, and was weighing the consequences in real time. "Ah," he said. "I was going to tell you. $23,000 Mark. You were going to tell me." He sat up, put his hands out, like he was calming a spooked horse. "It's for your parents. The closets. The house. You remember, right? We talked about this." "We talked about nothing. I was in labor. I was pushing a human being out of my body. You were holding my hand and telling me to breathe, and somewhere in there you decided to buy custom wardrobes for people who don't even live with us. Your mom mentioned it," he said, and his voice took on that wheedling tone, the one he used when he knew he was wrong but was trying to talk his way into being right. "She said they were struggling with clutter. The house is a disaster." And I thought, why not? We have the money. Your big commission is coming in. I just got my bonus. It made sense at the time. You didn't ask. I did. You said whatever I thought was best. Those were your exact words. "You're a liar," I said. "You're a manipulative, lying piece of Cassidy." He stood up now, towering over me like that was supposed to intimidate me. "Calm down. You're going to wake the baby." And that did it. That broke something in me. Because he was right, the baby had woken up, and I could hear him crying in the next room, and I was still bleeding and broken and wearing a diaper like a helpless toddler, and my husband had just spent my money on something I didn't need or want for people who would never, ever pay me back. I walked out. I didn't have a grand exit speech or a clever one-liner. I just turned around and walked into the nursery and picked up my son, and I held him while I cried. The TRS were hot, angry, the kind that burn your eyes. And I kept thinking about how I'd built that credit score from nothing, how I'd crawled out of a childhood of poverty and hand-me-downs to buy my first ART supplies. how I'd sold sketches at F.A. Ramirez Marquettes for $5 apiece, just to keep the lights on. I thought about all the nights I'd stayed up painting, building a career that no one in my family thought was real, while Mark had coasted on his corporate job and his golf buddies and his confidence that the world would always take care of him. It was 3 a.m. I could call the bank, file a police report, mark the transaction as fraud, and let the chips fall. But that meant involving the authorities, and my mother would never forgive me. It meant admitting to everyone that my husband was a thief, and my family was complicit, and my life was a joke, that I waited until dawn. Then I called my mother. She answered on the first ring, which was unusual because she was always at the gym at 6, or at a brunch, or just generally avoiding me. But she answered, and her voice was chipper, excited, like she'd been waiting for this call. Cassidy. Oh, honey, I was just thinking about you. Did you get the photos? The closets are reinstalled, and they are magnificent. The designer said it's the best work she's ever done. You have to come see them. Mom, I said, Mark used my credit card to pay for them. Oh, I know. She laughed, a bright tinkling sound that made my stomach twist. He told us it was your idea. Such a sweet gesture. We were so touched, Cassidy. We've been feeling so overwhelmed with everything, and this just lifted such a weight off our shoulders. The card is in my name, I said. Not Mark's. He used it without asking. Now, don't be like that. You're my ride. What's his is yours, and what's yours is his. That's how marriage works. You can't be stingy with family, Cassidy. Family comes first. This isn't stingy, I said. This is theft.
He stole from me, Mom.
He did it behind my back. There was a pause. I could hear her breathing, the little huff she made when she was trying to find the right words. You're upset. I understand. Postpartum is so hard. Your emotions all over the place. And you haven't been sleeping. I remember how it was with you. I cried for months. It was terrible. But this isn't something to ruin your marriage over, Cassidy. It's just money. Just money, I repeated. $23,000 just money. You'll make more. You're so talented. And Mark has a good job. You're not going to STA Irv. We're not going to STA Irv. This is a blessing, Cassidy. A blessing. The closets are beautiful, and when we sell the house, it will increase the value. It's an investment. When you sell the house, she went quiet. I could hear the TV in the background, something with a laugh track, and for a moment I hated her for being able to watch TV while my world was collapsing. We're not selling the house, I said. You're not selling anything. Well, that's what we wanted to talk to you about. Dad and I have been thinking about moving. Florida. Your Aunt Carol has a place down there, and it's warm. The winters so hard on your father's joints. We think it's time. You're selling the house. We're not making any decisions yet, but we're exploring options. And the closets, they just add so much. We were thinking maybe you and Mark could help us with some of the closing costs. Just a small loan, really. We'd pay you back, of course, when we get the proceeds from the sale. I closed my eyes. The baby was asleep in my arms, and I could feel his tiny heart beat against my chest, and I wanted to be a better person than I was in that moment. I wanted to be forgiving and generous and understanding, but all I could see was a lifetime of this. My mother's hand in my pocket, Mark's hand in my pocket. Everyone taking, and me giving until there was nothing left. I have to go, I said. Cassidy, don't hang up. I just want you to know how grateful we are. And we're so excited for you to see the closets. They're beautiful. You did such a wonderful thing for us. We'll be talking about this forever. I hung up. I threw the phone on the couch and I walked to the window. Outside, the sun was coming up over the neighborhood. All those perfect houses with their perfect lawns and perfect families. And I hated all of them too. Every single one. Mark came out of the guest room an hour later, dressed for work, smelling like expensive cologne. He walked past me to the kitchen, poured himself coffee, and took a long, deliberate sip before he spoke. Your mom called me, he said. She said you were upset. I told her you were just tired. It's the hormones.
You should see someone about that.
Maybe talk to a doctor. Don't talk to me about hormones. I'm just saying, you've been really emotional lately. It's not like you to fly off the handle over a little thing like a closet. A little thing. I turned to face him. $23,000 RS. My personal credit CA road. Without my consent. That's not a little thing, MARK. That's a crime. Okay. He held up his hands.
Fine.
I apologize. I'm sorry.
Happy.
Now can we please just move on? I have a meeting in an hour, and I don't have time to fight with you about money. You know how I feel about money fights. Your feelings aren't the priority right now. They never are, he said. Your work is always the priority. Your ART. Your little studio downtown. Your precious paintings. I'm just the husband who works a real job and pays the mortgage and tries to help your family.
But no, you don't see that.
You just see the money. He walked out, slamming the door behind him. I could hear his CARSTA rooting in the driveway. I could hear the GA rage door opening, the engine fading as he drove away. And I stood there in the kitchen, in my nursing tank top and mesh underwear, holding my son, and I realized I had never been more alone in my entire life. I called my brother, Kevin, I said. I need you to tell me the truth about the house. Cassie.
He sighed.
You don't want to know the truth. Yes, I do. Mom and Dad, underwater. They've been borrowing against the house for yours. Credit CARDS, payday loans, I don't even know. Dad's pension got cut, and Mom's Social Security doesn't cover half of what she spends. They're not moving to Florida because they want to. They're moving because the bank is going to take the house, and they'd rather leave on their own terms. You knew this. I guessed. I didn't know for sure until last week, when Dad asked me to co-sign on a loan. I said no. I'm not doing that again. The closets, I said. MARK paid for custom closets. They can't afford to pay him back. They're never going to pay me back. And the closets won't add enough value to cover the debt. No, Kevin said slowly. They won't. But you need to think about that. You need to think about why MARK would do something like that. Why he'd put $23,000 RS into a house that's about to be repoed. What are you saying? I'm saying, Cassie, that maybe MARK knew what he was doing. Maybe he was trying to help them. Or maybe he was trying to help himself. I didn't understand what he meant. Not then. But I stored it away, locked it in the back of my mind, because I was rooting to realize that no one in my life was telling me the whole truth. Not my husband. Not my mother. Not my brother. I was surrounded by liars, and the only person I could trust was the tiny, sleeping infant in my arms. I went to the studio that afternoon. My first time leaving the house in weeks. I drove slow, my incision aching with every bump in the road, and I parked in front of the old brick building that had become my sanctuary. I climbed the stairs, my legs shaking, and I opened the door to my space. It smelled like turpentine and paint. It smelled like me. I pulled out my canvas.
Sta RT painting.
Not what I'd been working on before, those abstract watercolors I sold to galleries and collectors. No, I painted something different. I painted the truth. I painted my mother's face on a woman drowning in debt. I painted MARK's face on a man with his hand in a purse. I painted the closets, those beautiful, impossible closets, filled with nothing but emptiness, and when I was done, I signed my name at the bottom. The next morning, I called a divorce attorney. I didn't tell MARK. I didn't tell my mother. I didn't tell anyone. I just made the call, and I route gathering my documents. My bank statements. My credit CARD statements. The receipts from Bellafina. The texts from my mother. The call logs. Everything. 7 weeks. I gave myself 7 weeks to build my case, to protect my assets, to take back the life I'd let everyone else pilfer. And if they came after me, if they tried to destroy what I'd built, I had a plan. Because I'd reneged one thing in the past 24 hours. You can't save people who don't want to be saved. But you can damn sure save yourself. I hung up the phone and looked at my son. He was awake, his eyes wide, ring at me with that new baby look that sees everything and nothing. I leaned down and kissed his forehead. It's just you and me now, I said. And we're going to be okay. Then I heard my phone buzz. Another text from Bellafina. Your final invoice is ready. I opened it, scrolled to the bottom, and saw the numbers, $23,400 due in full. RK had put the whole thing on my CA/RD without a down payment. The total was due in 30 days. They weren't just paying for the closets. They were paying for everything. And if I couldn't come up with the money by the deadline, Bellafina would send it to collections. Collections with interest, with fees, with the credit score I'd spent a decade building down the drain. I grabbed my keys and I walked out the door. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay. Not in this house. Not with his clothes in the closet and his cologne in the bathroom and his half-empty coffee mug still sitting on the counter, like he owned the place. He didn't own anything. Not anymore. I was about to make sure of it. The attorney's office smelled like old leather and fresh coffee, the kind of place where people went to have their lives dissected and reassembled into something more manageable. I sat across from a woman named Diane who had silver hair and reading glasses perched on her nose, and a way of looking at me that made me feel like she already knew my entire story before I'd opened my mouth. She was the kind of lawyer you hired when you were done playing nice. The kind who didn't flinch when you told her your husband had committed credit CA/RD fraud while you were recovering from major abdominal surgery. Let me get this straight, Diane said, clicking her pen. He used your personal CA/RD, not a joint account, without your knowledge or consent, while you were incapacitated. And he did this to pay for renovations on a house that your parents are about to lose to foreclosure. Yes, I said. That's exactly what happened. She made a note. And the total amount, $23,400 RS, plus interest. The final payment is due in 30 days. And you have no documentation proving you agreed to this purchase. I have texts from my mother thanking me for the gift. I have emails from Bellafina confirming the order, sent to my husband's email address, not mine. I have a credit CA/RD statement showing the CA/RD. I have nothing that shows I knew about it beforehand. Diane nodded slowly. That's good. That's very good. But I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. She leaned four-way RD, her eyes sharp. Did you want to save your mariage? I opened my mouth to answer, and nothing came out. Because the truth was, I didn't know. I'd spent 7 years with MARK, 7 years of building a life together, of making compromises, of telling myself that love meant overlooking the small betrayals. But this wasn't small. This was a chasm, a gap so wide I couldn't see the other side. I don't know, I said finally. I don't know if there's anything left to save. Then we proceed as if you're protecting yourself, Diane said. I'll file a police report for the unauthorized credit CA/RD use. I'll send a cease and desist to Bellafina, freezing the final payment while we investigate. And I'll START the divorce proceedings. But I need you to understand something. Once we START this, there's no going back. Your husband will be served. Your family will know. And there will be fallout. I'm Auri, I said. Ryu, because fallout has a way of looking different when it's your mother crying on the phone and your father refusing to speak to you. Divorce isn't just legal. It's emotional. It's your entire life turning inside out. I've been turned inside out, I said. I'm ready. She believed me. I could see it in the way she relaxed, just slightly, like she'd been waiting for me to fold, and I didn't. She handed me a stack of paperwork and told me to come back in a week with the documents she needed. I took the stack, walked out of her office, and sat in my CAR for 20 minutes before I could drive. I went to the studio. It was my only refuge now, the only place where the walls didn't feel like they were closing in. I unlocked the door and stepped inside, and I immediately knew something was wrong. The air was off. The light was off. My canvases were stacked in the corner, but they weren't stacked the way I'd left them. Someone had been here. Did I check the window?
Locked. The door.
Still intact. But the lock on the supply cabinet had been jimmied open, and my expensive brushes were scattered across the floor like somebody had been looking for something. My paints were intact. My sketches were still in their portfolio. But my phone charging cord was gone. My emergency cash, the $200 RS I kept in the bottom drawer, was gone. And on my desk, right in the center, there was a note. I picked it up. The handwriting was familiar, R. Lupi, ca. Realis, the handwriting of someone who'd never had to worry about anything in their entire life. Cassidy, we need to talk. Stop acting like a child. You're EMBA rassing yourself.
Call me.
Mom. I read it twice. 3 times. Then I crumpled it up and threw it in the trash. She'd come here. My mother had come to my studio, broken into my supply cabinet, and stolen my stuff. Not because she needed it, because she wanted to send a message. Because she wanted me to know that even in my sanctuary, even in the one place I'd built for myself, I wasn't safe from her. I called Kevin. I was shaking, my hands trembling so hard I could rely hold the phone. She broke into my studio. I said. Mom broke into my studio. What? Cassie, slow down. She took my emergency cash and my phone charger. She left a note. She wants me to call her. She called me a child, Kevin. She broke into my space and called me a child. I heard him exhale, long and slow.
I told you, he said.
I told you she's not well. She's been like this for years, ever since Dad lost the pension. She's been spiraling. And you were always the one who made it better. You gave her money. You gave her attention. You gave her everything she wanted. And now you're not giving her anything, and she doesn't know how to handle it. I can't handle her. I have a baby. I have a husband who stole from me. I have a career that's about to collapse because I can't even think straight. I can't be her retaker too. Then don't be, Kevin said. Cut her off.
I did.
It was the rightest thing I ever did, but I did it. And you need to do it too. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because cutting off my mother meant cutting off everything I'd ever known. It meant admitting that the woman who raised me, who fed me and clothed me and told me I could be anything, had become someone I didn't recognize. Someone who would break into her daughter's studio and steal $200 Rs because she felt entitled to it. I have to go, I said. I'll call you later. I hung up and sat down on the floor of my studio, surrounded by the mess she'd made. I picked up my brushes one by one, put them back in their case. I organized my paints. I cleaned the desk. And when I was done, I took out a fresh canvas and I root to paint that I painted my mother. Not the way she looked now, with her perfect hair and her designer clothes and her constant smile. I painted her the way she looked when I was 6 years old, when she'd sit on the edge of my bed and tell me stories about princesses who saved themselves. I painted her the way she looked when she was proud of me, when I brought home my first RD, and she cried because she'd never won anything in her whole life. I painted her the way I wished she still was. And then I painted over it. I painted her face, twisted with anger, with entitlement, with a desperate need to control everything around her. I painted her as a thief, as a bully, as the woman who would sacrifice her daughter's happiness for her own convenience. When I was done, I looked at it for a long time. Then I took a photo and sent it to my brother. This is what I see, I texted. This is what I'm dealing with. He texted back 3 minutes later. I know. I see it too. That night I went home. Mark was waiting for me. He was sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open, a glass of wine in his hand, looking like he'd just gotten home from a long day at the office and was ready to relax. He didn't get up when I walked in. He didn't ask where I'd been or how I was feeling. He just looked at me and said, "Your mom called." I'm sure she did. She said you're filing for divorce. She said you're accusing me of fraud. She said you're trying to destroy our family. She's not wrong. Mark closed his laptop. Cassidy, what are you doing? This is insane. You're going to throw away our marriage over a closet. It's not about a closet, Mark. It's about you stealing from me. It's about you lying to me. It's about you putting my credit on the line for your own ego and then gaslighting me into thinking I'm the one with the problem. I was trying to help your family. No, you weren't. You were trying to buy their approval. You were trying to make yourself look like the big hero while I was flat on my back in a hospital bed. You used me, Mark. You used me, and you didn't even think twice about it. He stood up. His face was red, the vein in his forehead pulsing the way it always did when he was about to lose his temper. You know what? I don't have to listen to this. I work hard. I provide for this family. I put a roof over your head and food on the table and clothes on your back. And you want to throw it all away because I made one mistake. One mistake, I repeated. You put $23,000 RS on my credit card without my permission. That's not a mistake. That's a crime. It was an oversight. I forgot to ask. It was a tiny lapse in judgment, and you're acting like I committed murder. I'm acting like someone who just realized her husband doesn't respect her. Her mother doesn't respect her. Her entire family sees her as nothing but a bank account with legs. And I'm done pretending that's okay. I walked to the bedroom and sta route packing.
Not everything.
Just the essentials. Leo's things. My things. The things I couldn't replace if this went sideways. Mark stood in the doorway, watching me, his arms crossed over his chest. Where are you going? He asked. To the studio. I'm staying there. The studio isn't a place to live. There's no shower. No kitchen. I'll figure it out. He watched me for another minute. Then he shook his head, turned around and walked away. I heard him open another bottle of wine. I heard the TV turn on. I heard him laugh at something, some sitcom with a laugh track, like his life hadn't just exploded around him that I left that night. I didn't look back. The studio was cold and dark when I arrived. I set up Leo's bassinet in the corner, wrapped him in 3 blankets, and put him down to sleep. Then I sat on the floor, leaned against the wall, and tried to figure out what my life had become. I'd spent years building a career. I'd spent years saving money. I'd spent years trying to be a good wife, a good daughter, a good sister. And for what? For this, for a husband who saw me as a bank account and a mother who saw me as a safety net and a future that was crumbling around me. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts. I landed on a name I hadn't called in years. My old mentor, Professor Elaine C.A. Reuter, the woman who taught me everything I knew about art and business, and the fine art of not letting anyone treat you like a doormat. Professor, I said when she answered. It's Cassidy. I need your help. Cassidy. Her voice was familiar. It's been a long time. What's wrong? I'm in trouble, I said. My family, my husband, everything's falling apart. And I need someone to tell me it's going to be okay. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, come to my gallery tomorrow. We'll talk. And Cassidy, it's going to be okay. You're stronger than you think. I hung up and looked at my son, sleeping peacefully in his bassinet. He had no idea what was happening. He had no idea that his mother's world was imploding. But he would. One day, he would know the whole story. And I would make sure he knew how to fight back. I slept on the floor that night, a thin blanket beneath me, my coat as a pillow. And in the morning, I woke up with a plan. Not a good plan, not a complete plan, but a plan nonetheless. I was going to take back my life. I was going to take back my money. And I was going to take back my future. Step 1, call a locksmith and change the locks on the studio. Step 2, call the bank and freeze my CA road. Step 3, call Diane and tell her I was ready to fight. But before any of that, I called my mother. Mom, I said, we need to talk. Really talk. Not about the money. Not about the closets.
About you.
About us. About what's been happening for the last 20 years. She was silent. Then she said, what are you talking about? Come to the studio, I said. Tomorrow afternoon. And bring Dad. We need to have a conversation. And I hung up. I didn't wait for her answer. I didn't give her a chance to argue or deflect or make it about her. I just hung up and set the phone down, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I had the upper hand, like I had the power, like I was finally in control. My mother showed up at the studio at 2 o'clock the next day. She didn't knock. She never knocked. She just pushed the door open and stood there, silhouetted against the hallway light, her purse clutched to her chest like she was expecting to be ambushed. My father was behind her, smaller than I remembered, his shoulders hunched and his hands shoved deep into his coat pockets. He looked like a man who'd been dragged somewhere he didn't want to go, which was exactly what had happened. I'd called him separately, told him to come, told him it was important. And he'd come. Because for all his faults, my father had never once failed to show up when I asked. It was my mother who made the excuses. Cassidy, she said, stepping inside. This is ridiculous. You could have just come to the house. We could have had this conversation at the kitchen table like civilized people. I didn't want to have it at the kitchen table, I said. I wanted to have it here. In my space. On my terms. She looked around the studio with Rely concealed disdain. The paint splatters on the floor. The half-finished canvases stacked against the wall. The cot in the corner where I'd been sleeping. Her lip curled just slightly, a micro-expression she probably thought I didn't catch. Dad, I said, come in.
Sit down.
Please. He shuffled over to the one chair I had and sat down heavily, his knees creaking. My mother remained standing, her arms crossed, her foot tapping. I waited until they were both settled, then I sat down across from them and took a breath. I asked you here because I want to tell you something. And I need you to listen without interrupting. Can you do that? My mother opened her mouth to respond, and I held up a hand. No. I said no interrupting. I'm asking you to sit here and listen. That's it. That's all I'm asking. She closed her mouth. Her jaw tightened, but she stayed quiet. It was a small victory, but I'd take it. $23,000 RS, I said. That's what Mark put on my credit card without my permission. That's what he spent on custom closets for a house you're about to lose to foreclosure. And when I confronted him about it, he told me I'd agreed. He told me I'd said, whatever you think is best. I was in labor. I was pushing a child out of my body. I was not in a position to agree to anything. But he told you I'd agreed, and you believed him.
You didn't call me.
You didn't check. You just took the money and ran with it. My mother's face was a mask. We didn't know it was on your credit road. You knew. You told me on the phone. You said Mark told you it was my idea.
You thanked me.
You thanked me for the closets. So you knew. You just didn't see where the money came from as long as it was coming. That's not fair, Cassidy.
No.
What's not fair is that you've been taking from me my entire life. You've borrowed money you never paid back. You've asked for help you never needed. You've treated me like an ATM with a smile, and you've made me feel guilty every single time I said no. And I'm done. I'm done being your bank account. I'm done being your retirement plan. I'm done being the person you call when you need something, but never when you just want to talk. My father shifted in his chair. He was looking at the floor, his hands clasped between his knees. I could see the shame radiating off him, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of pity. He was a good man. He'd always been a good man. But he'd spent 40 years enabling my mother, and he'd never once stood up to her. Dad, I said, I'm not asking you to pick sides. I'm just asking you to hear me. I need you to understand what's happening. He looked up at me. His eyes were red, the way they got when he was trying not to cry. I understand, he said. I understand more than you think. Then why did you let her do it? Why did you let Mark do it? Why didn't anyone stop this? Because we didn't know how, he said. We didn't know how to tell you we were drowning. We thought if we just kept going, if we just pretended everything was fine, it would eventually work itself out. But it didn't. It got worse. And now we're losing the house, and we're losing you, and we don't have anything left. I hadn't expected that. The honesty, the raw vulnerability. My father had never been a man of many words. He'd always let my mother do the talking, let her handle the difficult conversations. But here he was, laying it all bare, and I didn't know what to do with it. Tell me the truth, I said. All of it. I want to know exactly what's happened. And he did. He told me about the medical bills from my mother's knee surgeries, the ones insurance had Rely covered. He told me about the credit card debt they'd racked up trying to keep up appearances, the loans they'd taken out against the house, the second mortgage they'd signed without fully understanding the terms. He told me about Dad's pension getting slashed when his company got bought out, and my mother's Social Security being Rely enough to cover the groceries. He told me they'd been stealing from Peter to pay Paul for ERS, and Peter had finally stopped answering their calls. Your mother, he said, his voice cracking. She didn't know how to handle it. She's never been good with money. Neither have I. We kept thinking something would change. Something would save us. And when Mark offered to pay for the closets, she thought it was a sign. She thought things were finally turning around. It wasn't his money to offer, I said. It was mine. And I didn't know anything about it. I know, he said. I know now. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Cassidy. I should have stopped her. I should have asked you. I should have. Dad, stop. I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at the situation.
I'm mom.
But I'm not mad at you. My mother made a sound, a sharp huff of indignation. So it's all my fault. I'm the one who ruined everything. No, I said. You're not the one who ruined everything. But you're the one who refused to see what was happening. You're the one who kept borrowing and spending and pretending nothing was wrong. You're the one who let me see the weight of this family without ever once asking if I was okay. And that's not okay. That's not what mothers are supposed to do. She opened her mouth to a ragu, and for a second, I thought we were going to have the fight we'd been having for 20 years. But then something shifted. Something in her expression cracked. And for the first time in my memory, she looked genuinely lost. I didn't know how to tell you, she said. I didn't know how to tell anyone. Your father and I, we were so ashamed. We thought we'd be able to fix it on our own. We thought we'd be able to work it out. But it just kept getting worse, and we didn't know what to do. So you kept taking. You kept taking from me and from everyone else, and you hoped it would all just go away. Yes, she said.
Yes.
That's exactly what I did. We sat in silence for a long moment. The weight of what she'd just admitted hung in the air between us. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to scream at her and tell her she'd ruined everything. But instead, I just felt tired. Bone deep, soul-crushing tired. I can't fix this for you, I said. I can't. I don't have the money, and I don't have the energy. But I can help you figure out a plan. I can help you talk to a financial counselor. I can help you sell the house and move to Florida, like you planned. What I can't do is keep pretending this is my responsibility. It's not. It never was. My mother nodded slowly. It was an agreement, not exactly. It was more like acceptance. A recognition that she'd run out of options. Okay, she said. Okay. I looked at my father. He was crying now, silent tears streaming down his face. I stood up and walked over to him, and I put my hand on his shoulder. It's going to be okay, Dad. I promise. We're going to figure this out. He nodded, unable to speak. My mother stood up too, brushing off her skirt like she was trying to brush off the whole conversation.
We should go, she said.
We've taken enough of your time. Mom, I said. Wait. She turned back. Her face was pale, drawn. She looked older than I'd ever seen her. I love you, I said. I know I'm angry, and I know I said some hot RSH things. But I love you. And I'm not going to let this destroy our family. We're going to figure this out. Together. She sta root to cry. Not the quiet TRS I'd seen from my father, but ugly, gasping sobs. She pressed her hand to her mouth, trying to hold it in, but it was too late. Everything she'd been holding back for RS came pouring out. I'm sorry, she said. I'm so sorry, Cassidy. I never meant to hurt you. I didn't know what else to do. Neither did I said. But we're going to Leah RN together. She nodded and walked out of the studio, my father right behind her. I watched them go, and when they were gone, I leaned against the wall and let myself breathe. The confrontation with Mark was scheduled for later that week. Diane had the papers ready, and I had a plan. But before I could deal with him, I needed to deal with me. I needed to look in the mirror and see someone who wasn't broken. Someone who could stand up for herself. I pulled out my phone and called Professor C.A. Reuter. Cassidy, how did it go? It went, I said. We talked. We didn't solve everything, but we talked. That's a START. Yeah, it is. Cassidy, I want to show you something. Can you come to the gallery tomorrow? I agreed. I didn't have anything better to do, and the idea of being somewhere other than my tiny studio was appealing. But when I got there, I wasn't prepared for what she had in store. The gallery was a sprawling space in the ARTS district, all exposed brick and high ceilings and perfect lighting. Professor C.A. Rudin met me at the door and led me to a back room where she'd set up a small exhibit. My exhibit. 6 of my paintings, framed and hung, with my name on a placard RD at the entrance. "Professor, what is this, your work?" she said. "It's brilliant, Cassidy. I've been following your CA rear for years, and I've been waiting for you to have a moment like this. A moment where you realize your talent is worth more than you've been giving it credit for." I walked around the room, looking at my own work as if I were seeing it for the first time. The colors were rich, the brushstrokes bold. These weren't the safe, marketable pieces I'd been selling to collectors. These were the pieces I'd painted in secret, the ones I'd kept hidden because they were too personal, too raw. "These are the paintings I did after Leo was born," I said. "The ones I did when I couldn't sleep. And they're stunning. They tell a story. Your story. And I think people are going to want to hear it." I looked at her. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," she said, "that I want to give you a show. A solo show. Here. In 3 months. If you're ready. A solo show. In a real gallery. With real critics and real buyers and real money. The kind of thing I'd been dreaming about since I was a teenager, the kind of thing I'd always thought was out of reach." "Yes," I said. "Yes, I'm ready." But even as I said it, I knew there was one more thing I had to do. One more person I had to face. Mark. And I was ready for that too. I was ready to take back what was mine. I had the papers in my hand when I walked into the house. The same house I'd left 7 weeks ago. The same house that now felt like a stranger's home. Mark was in the kitchen, exactly where I'd left him in my mind, standing at the counter with a coffee mug in one hand and his phone in the other. He looked up when I came in, and for a second I saw something flash across his face.
Guilt. Fear.
Then it was gone, replaced by that practiced calm he used whenever he wanted to pretend the world wasn't burning down around him.
"Cassidy," he said.
"You're back." I was rooting to think you'd run off for good. "I didn't run off," I said. "I was getting my head straight. Something you clearly haven't bothered to do." He set down his coffee and crossed his arms. "Look, I know you're upset. I get it, but this has gone on long enough. We need to talk about what happens next." "What happens next is this." I set the divorce papers on the counter between us.
"I'm filing."
"The papers ready. You're being served tomorrow morning. But I wanted to give you the courtesy of telling you in person." He read at the papers like they were a dead animal someone had left on his doorstep. His face went pale. His mouth opened and closed. For a second, he looked genuinely lost, a man who just realized his entire life was about to implode. "You're serious," he said. "You're actually doing this?" "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." "You can't be serious. We have a baby, Cassidy. We have a family. You're going to throw all of that away over a closet. It's not about a closet. It's about trust. It's about respect. It's about you treating me like a bank account instead of a partner. And I'm done pretending that's okay." He slammed his hand on the counter. The sound echoed through the kitchen, sharp and violent. "You think you're so perfect. You think you're the only one who's been wronged here. I've been trying to keep this family together for years. I've been working my ass off. I've been dealing with your mother and her constant demands and your father's helplessness, and you sitting in your little studio painting pictures like that's a real job. And what do I get for it? What do I get you walking out on me like I'm nothing?" "You get nothing," I said, "because you reneged nothing. You didn't earn my trust. You didn't earn my respect. You certainly didn't earn $23,000 of my money. And you're not going to get a dime more from me." His eyes narrowed. "Is that what this is about? Money? You're divorcing me because of money. I'm divorcing you because you stole from me. I'm divorcing you because you lied to me. I'm divorcing you because you made me feel like I was crazy for being upset about a $23,000 betrayal. And I'm divorcing you because I finally realized I deserve better. Better than what? Better than a husband who works hard and provides and tries to help your family when they're drowning. You're making a mistake, Cassidy. A huge mistake." "No," I said. "The mistake was marrying you. The mistake was trusting you. The mistake was believing that if I just loved you enough, you would eventually love me back the way I deserved.
He laughed.
A cold, brittle laugh that made my skin crawl. You think you're so noble. You think you're the victim here. But you're not. You're just another selfish woman who's never been satisfied with anything she has. I didn't rise to the bait. I'd spent years reacting to his provocations, years letting him twist my words and make me feel small. But I was done. I was too tired to fight, and too angry to say whatever you want. I said. It doesn't matter. The papers are refiled. The divorce is happening. And I'm taking everything I'm entitled to. You can't take anything, he said. It's marital property. Half of everything is mine. Except for my credit CA/RD debt. That's mine too. And I have documentation showing that you used my CA/RD without my consent. That's fraud, MARK. That's a crime. And I have a lawyer who's already prepared to pursue charges if you try to fight me on this. He went quiet. I could see the wheels turning behind his eyes, the calculation he was making. He was trying to figure out if I was bluffing. He was trying to figure out how much trouble he was really in. This is your last chance, MARK. Let me go. Let me take what's mine.
Don't fight me.
Don't make this harder than it has to be. Just sign the papers and walk away. I'm not signing anything, he said. You want a divorce, fine. But I'm taking half. Every bit of it. Your studio. Your ART. Your savings. Everything. I earned half of it, and I'm going to get it. You didn't earn any of it, I said. My studio is mine. My ART is mine. My savings are mine. You didn't contribute a single dollar to any of it. The mortgage on this house was paid for with my money. The car you drive was paid for with my money. The clothes on your back were paid for with my money. You didn't earn anything. You just took. He lunged four-way road. I braced myself, expecting a blow, but he stopped short, his fists clenched at his sides. His face was red, his veins bulging, and I could see the rage in his eyes. The rage and the shame and the desperate, pathetic need to feel powerful. You think you're so much better than me, he said. You think you're the one who's been ring this marriage. But you haven't. You've been checked out for yours. You've been hiding in your studio, painting your little pictures, pretending you're too good for all of this. I'm not pretending anything, I said. I'm finally being honest. And that's more than you've ever been. I turned to leave. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing me break down, of seeing me cry the way I'd cried so many times before. I walked out of the kitchen and down the hall, my feet ring me tawa RD the front door. Cassidy. His voice stopped me. If you walk out that door, we're done. There's no coming back from this. Good, I said. There's no coming back from what you did either. I walked out. I didn't look back. The drive back to the studio was a blur. I don't remember the stoplights or the turns or anything except the overwhelming sense of freedom that washed over me as I drove. I was free. Finally. After years of being trapped in a marriage that had drained me dry, I was finally freed. I parked in front of the studio and sat there for a moment, just breathing. My hands were shaking. My heart was racing. But for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. I went inside and walked to the corner where Leo was asleep in his bassinet. He was so small, so innocent. He had no idea what had happened today. He had no idea that his mother had just fought one of the most important battles of her life. But one day he would. One day I would tell him everything. And I would tell him that you don't have to stay in situations that make you small. You don't have to give and give until there's nothing left.
You can walk away.
You can choose yourself. That I picked him up and held him close, breathing in that baby smell that always made me feel like everything was going to be okay. And I realized something. I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for him too. I was fighting to build a life where he would never have to grow up in a home filled with resentment and lies. I was fighting to show him that love doesn't mean sacrifice. It means partnership. It means respect. It means choosing each other every single day. I put him back down and pulled out my phone. I had missed calls from my mother, my brother, even my father. They'd HRD about the filing. They wanted to know what was happening. But I didn't have the energy to talk to them right now. I needed to process. I needed to breathe. I scrolled through my messages and found one from Professor C.A. Rude. The show is confirmed. 3 months. We're going to make this huge. I smiled. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. Then my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I opened it and read the message. You think you've won. But you haven't. This isn't over. I knew it was Mark. I didn't need a name to recognize the bitterness. But I also knew something he didn't. I was no longer afraid of him. I was no longer afraid of anyone. I typed back a single word. Bring it. And I meant it. The next morning, I woke up before Leo's first cry. I felt rested for the first time in months. I got up, made coffee, and sat at my desk with a new canvas waiting for me. I didn't paint what I'd been painting before. I didn't paint the safe, marketable pieces I'd been selling to collectors. I painted something new, something raw, something that felt like liberation. I painted a woman standing in front of an open door, her back to the viewer, looking out at a world she'd never had the courage to explore. The light was pouring in, bright and warm, and the woman was about to step through. It wasn't a painting of fear. It was a painting of hope. When I was done, I signed my name and set it aside. And I knew, deep down, that everything was going to be okay. Not because my problems were gone. Not because I'd won some imaginary battle, but because I'd finally realized who I was. And who I was, someone who could survive anything. The process server found Mark on a Tuesday morning. I know because he called me 20 minutes later, his voice jagged and raw in a way I'd never heard before. You actually did it, he said. You actually served me. In front of my boss. In front of everyone at the office. Do you have any idea how humiliating that was? I was standing in my studio, a paintbrush in one hand, Leo and a CA wire on my back, and I felt nothing.
No guilt.
No satisfaction. Just a hollow calm that had settled over me like a second skin. You could have signed the papers quietly, I said. You could have let this be easy. You chose to make it hard. I didn't choose anything. You chose. You chose to destroy our marriage over a stupid mistake. It wasn't a mistake, Mark.
It was a pattern.
And I'm not going to argue with you about it anymore. If you want to talk about the divorce, you can talk to my lawyer. He sta root yelling, but I hung up before I could hear the rest. I'd heard enough. I'd heard a lifetime of his excuses, his justifications, his desperate attempts to make me the villain in a story he'd written himself. I was done listening. The next few weeks were a blur of legal paperwork and sleepless nights. Diane was relentless, pushing for discovery, pushing for full financial disclosure, pushing for everything she could get. Mark fought back through his own lawyer, a flashy guy named Bennett who specialized in making divorce as painful as possible. They demanded my financial records. They demanded my studio's financial records. They even demanded access to my personal journals, trying to paint me as unstable, as someone who wasn't fit to be a mother.
But I had Diane.
And Diane had seen it all before. Let them demand, she said. I've got a mountain of evidence that your husband's been spending your money for IRS. Every credit card statement, every bank transfer, every time he took cash out of your account without telling you. They want a war, they're going to get one. But they're going to lose. The financial audit was brutal. We went through IRS of transactions, uncovering a pattern of deception I'd been too blind to see. Mark had been quietly siphoning money from my accounts for most of our marriage. Small amounts at first, amounts I wouldn't notice. Then larger amounts hidden in categories I didn't check. He'd paid for vacations with his friends, luxury items, even a secret credit card I hadn't known about. In total, it added up to over $70,000 RS. I read at the spreadsheet Diane had read, my stomach churning. He stole $70,000 RS from me.
More than that, Diane said.
But this is what we can prove. He's been using you as a personal bank account for RS, Cassidy. And now we're going to make him pay it back. The deposition was scheduled for a Friday. I walked into the conference room with my head held high. dressed in a tailored blazer I'd bought for the occasion. Mark was already there, flanked by Bennett, his face a mask of concealed rage. He looked different. Haggai Road. Like the past few weeks had aged him by a decade. And for a split second, I felt a pang of something that might have been pity. Then I remembered the spreadsheets. The lies. The way he'd made me feel like I was crazy for questioning him. And the pity evaporated. The deposition lasted 6 hours. They asked about everything. My finances. My mental health. My relationship with my family. They tried to paint me as a neglectful mother, a selfish wife, a woman who'd abandoned her husband for no reason. Diane shot down every question, redirected every accusation, and laid out the evidence like a chess grandmaster. Mr. Thompson, Diane said at one point, can you explain why you transferred $3,000 RS from Mrs. Thompson's savings account to your personal account in January of 2020? I don't recall, he said. You don't recall. But the bank records show the transfer was authorized from your phone. Would you like to explain that it was for household expenses? Household expenses. And what specifically did those expenses include? I don't remember. It was RS ago. Let me help you, Diane said, sliding a document across the table. This is your credit card statement from that same month. It shows a Cha RG at a luxury watch boutique for $2,800 RS. Is it possible that's where the money went? Mark's face went pale. Bennett jumped in, objecting, but it was too late. The damage was done. We'd been building this case for weeks, piece by piece, transaction by transaction, and now the picture was complete. A picture of a man who'd been bleeding his wife dry while pretending to be the provider. The deposition ended with Bennett looking defeated and Mark looking like he wanted to crawl into a hole. Diane and I walked out of the conference room together, and she put a hand on my shoulder. Your husband is going to fight this, she said. He's going to do everything he can to make you suffer. But we've got him. He knows it, and that's why he's going to lash out. Are you ready for that? I've been ready, I said. I've been ready my whole life. That night, I sat on the floor of my studio with Leo in my lap and thought about everything that had happened. The deposition had been a victory, but it didn't feel like one. It felt like a wound that had finally been cleaned out, raw and painful, but necessary for healing. My phone buzzed. A text from Kevin. Mom's talking about contacting Mark directly. Says she wants to smooth things over. I told her to stay out of it. She didn't listen. I closed my eyes. Of course she hadn't. My mother had spent her entire life trying to smooth things over, papering over cracks until they became chasms. She didn't know how to let a conflict resolve itself. She had to intervene, to manage, to control. I called her. She answered on the first ring. Cassidy, I was just thinking about you. I heard about the deposition. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. But I think we should talk about maybe reaching out to Mark. He's still your husband after all. He's still Leo's father. We can't just... Mom, stop. I'm not calling to talk about Mark. I'm calling to tell you to stay out of this. Cassidy, I'm just trying to help. I know, but you're not helping. You're making it worse. The divorce is happening. Mark and I over. And there's nothing you or anyone else can do to change that. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, You're so angry. You've always been so angry. I never understood why. I laughed. A bitter, broken laugh. You don't understand why you spent my entire childhood making me feel like I wasn't good enough. Then you spent my adulthood taking everything I had and calling it love. And now you're wondering why I'm angry. That's not fair, Cassidy. No. None of this is fair. But it's the truth. And I'm done pretending it's not. I hung up. I didn't wait for her response. I didn't want to hear it. Leo was rooting to fuss, so I fed him and rocked him and put him to sleep. Then I sat in the darkness of my studio and looked at my phone. There was a message from an unknown number. I opened it. Your mother just called me. She said you're not doing well. She said I should reach out to you. I don't want to talk to you, but I thought you should know she's trying to interfere. I'm telling you this because I don't want her controlling the narrative. Whatever happens between us, she doesn't get to be in the middle of it. I read at the message for a long time. He was right about one thing. My mother didn't get to be in the middle of it. Neither did he. This was between me and myself, between me and the life I was trying to build. That I didn't respond to his message. I didn't respond to anyone. I just sat there in the quiet and let myself feel the anger, the sadness, the fear, and underneath all of it, the flicker of something that might have been hope. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. I wasn't going to let Mark take my money. I wasn't going to let my mother control my life. I wasn't going to let anyone else decide my future. I was going to build something new, something that belonged only to me. I pulled out my phone and called Professor C.A. Reuter. I want to accelerate the show, I said. I want it to happen in a month. I need to prove to everyone that I'm not broken. I need to show them what I can do. Cassidy, that's a huge deadline. Are you sure you can pull it off? Watch me, I said. Watch me. And I got to work. The next few days were a blur of painting and planning. I worked through the night, fueled by coffee and adrenaline and a desperate need to prove myself. Leo slept in his CA Ryer beside me, and I painted like my life depended on it. Because it did. This was my lifeline. This was my way out. I painted my mother.
I painted my RK.
I painted all the people who'd tried to keep me small. And then I painted myself. A woman standing tall, her face turned tawa RD the light, her hands covered in paint. A woman who had finally found her voice. The gallery opening was 3 weeks away when the letter A arrived. It wasn't a letter, actually. It was an envelope, thin and official-looking, hand-delivered to my studio by a process server who'd been paid extra to find me. I opened it standing in the doorway, Leo balanced on my hip, and I read the words 3 times before they fully registered. Mark was suing me for full custody of Leo. He was claiming I was unstable. He was claiming I'd abandoned my family. He was claiming I was a danger to our son because of my erratic behavior and unstable living situation. I called Diane immediately. She answered on the first ring, which told me she'd been expecting this. I told you he'd fight dirty, she said. This is his last play. He knows he's going to lose the financial battle, so he's trying to hit you where it hurts most. Can he do this? Can he actually take Leo away from me? He can try. And he will. But we have a strong case. You're the prima CA giver. You have a stable income, a stable living situation, and you haven't done anything that would justify losing custody. He's grasping at straws, Cassidy. But we need to be SMART. We need to be prepared. What do I need to do? First, don't panic. Second, document everything. Every moment you spend with Leo. Every feeding, every diaper change, every sleepless night. We need to show the court that you're the one taking CA of him. And third, find a way to prove that Mark isn't the father he's pretending to be. He's been absent for most of Leo's life. He's been working and traveling and prioritizing everything except his son. We need to make that clear. I hung up and read at the wall. The painting I'd been working on was propped against the easel, half finished. It was a portrait of Leo, his tiny face peaceful in sleep. I'd been working on it for days, trying to capture the exact shade of his eyes, the delicate curve of his lips. It was the most important thing I'd ever painted, and now Mark was trying to take him away from me. I sat down on the floor and let myself feel the fear. It washed over me in waves, cold and suffocating. What if he won? What if I lost Leo? What if everything I'd fought for collapsed in an instant? But then I looked at my son, sleeping in his bassinet, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to let Fia win. I wasn't going to let Mark win. I was going to fight for my son with everything I had. I called Kevin. I need you to do something for me. I said, I need you to testify. In court. About Mark. About what you've seen. Cassie, I don't know if I can do that. I'm not good with confrontation. Kevin, this is my son we're talking about. Mark is trying to take him away from me. I need you to help me fight him. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, Okay, I'll do it. For you. For Leo. But you owe me. I owe you everything, I said. Thank you. The custody hearing was scheduled for the same week as my gallery opening. I told myself I could handle both. I told myself I was strong enough. But the truth was I was terrified. Every time I thought about the he-ring, my stomach lurched. Every time I thought about the opening, my heart raced. It was too much. It was all too muched up, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. I had to keep moving. I called my mother. I didn't want to, but I needed to know where she stood. If Mark was going to use her against me, I needed to hear it from her directly. Mom, I said, Mark is suing me for custody. He's trying to take Leo away from me. I need to know if you're going to help him. Cassidy, don't be ridiculous. Of course I'm not going to help him. You're my daughter. Leo is my grandson. I would never do anything to hurt you. Then promise me. Promise me you won't testify on his behalf. Promise me you won't say anything to the court that could be used against me. Your brother already told me about this. I'm not going to testify. I don't want to be involved. This is between you and Mark. I'm staying out of it. I didn't believe her. I wanted to, but I didn't. My mother had a history of saying one thing and doing another. But I couldn't afford to worry about her right now. I had to focus on the he-ring, on the opening, on building a life for me and Leo. The week before the he-ring, Mark's lawyer filed a motion to have Leo evaluated by a court-appointed psychologist. The evaluation was scheduled for a Thursday, and I showed up at the office with Leo in my ARMS, my heart pounding. The psychologist was a woman named Dr. Patel, and she was kind but professional, asking me questions about my parenting style, my mental health, my plans for the future. Do you have any history of mental illness? She asked. No, I said. I've been to therapy, but I don't have a diagnosis. Your husband's lawyer has suggested that you're struggling with postpartum depression. Is that true? I was struggling, I said.
For a while.
But I've been getting help. I've been working with a therapist. I'm in a much better place now.
Good.
I'm glad to hear that. She made a note. And how is Leo doing? Is he hitting his developmental milestones? He is, I said.
He's happy.
He's healthy. He's the center of my world. She nodded and asked to see Leo. I handed him over, and she examined him gently, seeing at him, making sure he was alert and responsive. After a few minutes, she handed him back to me. Leo is clearly doing well, she said. He's well read for and loved. I'll write my report accordingly. I thanked her and walked out, my knees weak with relief. But the relief was short-lived. The he-ring was still coming, and I had no idea what to expect. The day of the he-ring, I showed up at the courthouse early. Diane was already there, waiting for me with a stack of documents and a reassuring smile. Kevin was there too, dressed in his best suit, looking nervous but determined. I hugged him and told him I loved him, and he hugged me back like he was trying to absorb some of my fear. Inside the courtroom, Mark was already seated at the defense table. He didn't look at me. He read straight ahead, his jaw tight, his hands clasped in front of him. His lawyer, Bennett, was whispering in his ear, and Mark nodded along like a robot following orders. The judge entered, and the he-ring began. Bennett presented his case. Cassidy was unstable. Cassidy had abandoned her husband. Cassidy was living in a studio with no proper facilities for a child. Cassidy had a history of mental health issues. Cassidy was an unfit mother. Diane countered every point. She presented evidence of Mark's financial abuse. She presented evidence of his absentee parenting. She presented documents proving that I'd been Leo's primary caregiver since birth. She brought in Kevin, who testified that he'd seen Mark neglect his fatherly duties time and time again. Mr. Thompson, Diane said to Mark during cross-examination, is it true that you spent 4 days in the Bahamas in September, leaving your wife alone with a newborn? That was a business trip, he said. A business trip that required you to be unreachable for 4 days, a business trip that required you to spend $5,000 on hotels and activities. I don't see what that has to do with this. It has everything to do with this, Mr. Thompson. You were absent for the first weeks of your son's life. You were absent when your wife needed you most. And now you're claiming that she's the one who's unfit, Bennett objected, but the damage was done. The judge looked at Mark with something approaching disdain, and I felt a surge of hope. At the end of the hearing, the judge delivered her ruling. Leo would stay with me. Mark would have visitation rights, but only supervised, and only after he completed a parenting course. The financial settlement would be decided at a later date, but the custody battle was over. I walked out of the courthouse with Leo in my arms and cried. Not because I was sad, but because I was so relieved I couldn't hold it in. Kevin hugged me. Diane patted my shoulder. And for the first time in months, I felt like everything was going to be okay. The gallery opening was in 3 days. I had 3 days to finish my paintings, hang them, and preparatory for the biggest night of my career. But I didn't career. I could do it.
Ide surviva bursa.
I was invincible that night. I went back to the studio and painted until my hands cramped. I painted a woman with a baby on her back, climbing a mountain. I painted a family reunion, broken but healing. I painted a mother and daughter, their hands reaching toward each other. And I painted a portrait of myself, standing tall, my face turned toward the light. I was ready for everything, for anything. Bring it on. The night of the gallery opening, I stood in front of the mirror in my studio, and recognized the woman ring back. She was thinner than I remembered, the sharp edges of her collarbones visible above the neckline of the black dress I'd borrowed from Professor Reuter. Her eyes were tired but clear, and there was something new in them. Something that looked like steel. Leo was with my brother for the evening. Kevin had volunteered without being asked, showing up at the studio with a bag of baby supplies and a nervous smile. Go do your thing, he said. I've got this. I've got him. You don't have to worry about anything tonight. I hugged him so hard he squeaked. Thank you. For everything. I don't know what I'd do without you. You'd figure it out, he said. You always do.
He was right.
I always did. But having him there, having someone in my corner, made all the difference. The gallery was packed when I arrived. Professor Reuter had pulled out all the stops. Champagne, hors d'oeuvres, a string quartet in the corner playing something classical and elegant. The walls were lined with my paintings, each one a piece of my soul, and people were actually looking at them, studying them, whispering to each other about the colors, the emotions, the stories they told. I stood by the entrance, feeling like an imposter. These were my paintings, my work. But I couldn't quite believe that anyone would career about them. Professor Reuter found me in the crowd and took my arm. You're doing great, she said. Just breathe. Enjoy it. This is your night. People actually here, I said. People actually looking at my art. Of course they agree. It's brilliant, Cassidy. You're brilliant. She steered me toward a group of critics, introduced me, and let me talk about my work. I stumbled through the first few sentences, my voice shaking, but then something clicked. I root talking about the paintings, about the emotions behind them, and the words came easily. I was telling the truth, telling my story, and people were listening. A woman approached me the end of the evening. She was older, elegantly dressed, with kind eyes and a quiet presence. She introduced herself as Marga Red Holloway, a gallery owner from New York. Your work is extraordinary, she said. I've been watching your career for some time, and I think you're ready for the next step. I blinked. The next step, I represent a gallery in Manhattan. We're looking for new artists, and I think you'd be a perfect fit. I'd like to talk to you about a show.
A solo show.
At my gallery. I felt the floor drop out from under me. A solo show in New York. It was everything I'd ever dreamed of, everything I'd ever worked for. I don't know what to say, I said.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. She smiled and handed me her road. Call me next week. We'll talk details. I watched her walk away, my heart racing. This was it. This was my chance. My ticket out of the life I'd been living, and into the future I'd always wanted. The rest of the night passed in a blur. People congratulated me, bought paintings, asked for my road. I smiled and shook hands and pretended I wasn't floating 3 feet off the ground. By the time the gallery closed, I'd sold half my work and had offers for the rest. I called Kevin on my way home. He picked up on the first ring. How did it go? He asked. I sold half my paintings. And a gallery owner from New York wants to give me a solo show. No way. Cassie, that's amazing. I know. I can't believe it. I can't believe any of this is happening. Believe it, he said. UEA Renette it. You deserve it. I ended the call and drove home with a smile on my face. For the first time in months, I felt like everything was falling into place, but the next morning, reality came crashing back. I got a call from Diane. Mark was challenging the custody ruling. He was claiming that the court-appointed psychologist had been biased, that I'd manipulated the evaluation, that Leo was in danger. He wanted a new hearing. What does this mean? I asked. Does he have a case? He has a case, Diane said. Not a strong one, but a case. He's going to drag this out as long as he can, Cassidy. He wants to break you. He wants to wear you down until you give up. I'm not giving up. I'll never give up. I know you won't. But we need to be SMART. We need to be strategic. And we need to find a way to prove that this is just harassment, that he's trying to punish you for leaving him. I hung up and looked at Leo, sleeping peacefully in his bassinet. He had no idea what was happening. He had no idea that his father was trying to TRUSAPART. But I knew, and I was ready to fight. I called Professor C.A. Rude. I needed to talk to her about the New York show, but I also needed something else. I needed advice. I needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy for fighting this. Cassidy, she said, you're not crazy. You're strong, and you're going to get through this.
But I want you to think about something.
Is this really about Leo, or is it about control? Is Mark trying to protect his son, or is he trying to hurt you? I thought about it.
Really thought about it.
And I realized she was right. Mark didn't read about Leo. He'd never read about Leo. He was using our son as a weapon, trying to punish me for leaving. And I wasn't going to let him. I have an idea, I said. I'm going to call his bluff. How? I'm going to offer him a deal. He can have visitation rights, unsupervised, no restrictions. In exchange, he drops the custody challenge and agrees to the financial settlement. Do you really think he'll take that? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. I called Diane and told her my plan. She was skeptical at first, but she agreed to try. A week later, Mark agreed to the deal. He didn't want to, but his lawyer had advised him that he was going to lose anyway. Better to negotiate now than to lose everything in court. The morning I signed the agreement, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was over. The custody battle was over. The divorce was over. Mark had finally let go. Did I walk to the studio that day with Leo in his CA Ryer and a smile on my face. The New York show was scheduled for 3 months from now. I had 3 months to prepare, 3 months to paint, 3 months to rebuild my life. And for the first time in years, I felt like I had nothing to fear. My mother called that night. I was surprised to hear her voice. We hadn't spoken in weeks, not since I told her to stay out of the divorce. Cassidy, she said, I want to come see you. I want to see Leo. I want to make things right. Mom, I don't know if I'm ready for that.
Please, she said.
I know I've made mistakes. I know I've been selfish. But I want to try. I want to be better. I was quiet for a long moment. Then I said, okay, come over tomorrow. We'll talk. She showed up the next day with my father. They stood in the doorway of my studio, looking at the paintings on the walls, the cot in the corner, the baby supplies stacked in the corner. My mother didn't say anything at first. She just stood there, taking it all in. This is your life now, she said. This is what you've built. Yes, I said. And I'm proud of it. I'm proud of you too, she said. I don't say that enough. But I am. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I opened my arms and hugged her. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. It was a step toward something new. The next few weeks were a blur of painting and preparation. The New York show was approaching, and I had to be ready. I worked through the nights, fueled by coffee and determination. Leo slept in his CA Ryer beside me, and I painted like my life depended on it. Because it did. The night before I left for New York, I stood in my studio and looked at the paintings on the walls. They were all there. All the pieces I'd painted over the past year. All the pieces I'd poured my soul into. They were going to a new city, to a new life, and I was going with them. I looked at Leo, sleeping in his CA Ryer. He was my anchor, my reason for everything. And I knew that as long as I had him, I could face anything. The next morning, I packed my bags and headed to the airport. Kevin drove me, and we talked about everything and nothing. When we arrived, he hugged me and told me he was proud of me. I hugged him back and told him I loved him. Go get him, he said. Show them what you're made of. I will, I said. I will. The plane took off, and I watched the city de Sape are beneath me. I was leaving behind everything I'd known. My family, my old life. And I was heading Tawa, RD something new that I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if the New York show would be a success or a failure. But I knew one thing for sure. I was ready. I had always been ready. I just needed to believe it. The New York Gallery was everything I'd imagined and nothing I'd expected. It sat on a quiet street in Chelsea, all exposed brick and polished concrete, the kind of place that made you feel like you'd arrived just by walking through the door. Marga Rhett Holloway greeted me with a wah-rm handshake and a knowing smile, like she'd been expecting me for years. Your work arrived yesterday, she said. We've already sta route hanging. I have to tell you, Cassidy, I've been in this business for 30 years, and I've never seen anything quite like it. Your paintings have a raw honesty that's re. People going to respond to that. I followed her through the gallery, past the half-hum canvases and the workers on ladders, and I felt a swell of pride so powerful it almost knocked me off balance. These were my paintings, my stories, my truth. And they were about to be seen by the entire city. The opening was scheduled for Friday night. I had 3 days to prepare, 3 days to get my head straight, 3 days to make sure everything was perfect. I spent every waking moment in the gallery, adjusting lights, arranging pieces, obsessing over the smallest details. Marga Rhett let me do whatever I needed, and I loved her for it. On the night of the opening, I stood in the back room and looked at myself in the mirror. I was wearing a dress I'd bought specifically for this occasion, a simple black sheath that made me feel powerful and elegant. My hair was up, my makeup was flawless, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged. Leo was with Kevin in the hotel room. I'd brought my brother with me for support, and he'd agreed to watch the baby while I did my thing. I called him before I walked out. How's he doing? I asked. He's perfect, Kevin said. He's asleep. He's been asleep for hours. Go out there and kill it, Cassie. I'll be here when you get back. I took a deep breath and walked out. The gallery was packed. I don't know how many people were there, but it felt like hundreds. They were standing in front of my paintings, studying them, talking about them, pointing at the details I'd spent so many sleepless nights perfecting. I walked through the crowd in a daze, accepting compliments and answering questions, and I felt like I was floating. Marga Rhett found me an hour in and pulled me aside. The reviews are coming in, she said. The New York Times is here. So is Art Forum. They're both writing about you, Cassidy. This is huge. I couldn't speak. I just nodded and let her lead me to a cluster of critics. They asked me about my process, my inspiration, the stories behind the paintings. I answered honestly, openly, and they seemed to appreciate it. When they left, I felt like I'd just run a marathon, but the night wasn't over yet. Near the end of the evening, I saw a familiar face in the crowd. It was Mark. He was standing in front of one of my largest paintings, a piece called The Reckoning, which showed a woman standing over a broken mirror. He was staring at it with an expression I couldn't quite read. I walked over to him. I didn't want to, but I knew I had to. I had to face him one last time. Mark, I said. I didn't expect to see you here. He turned to face me. He looked older than I remembered, tired and worn down. I came to see your work, he said. I wanted to know what you'd been doing with yourself. And now you know. He nodded slowly. It's good, Cassidy. It's really good. I didn't realize how much you had inside you. You never bothered to look.
He didn't argue.
He just stood there looking at the painting. I'm sorry, he said. For everything. I know it doesn't make up for what I did, but I'm sorry. I was wrong. About all of it. I looked at him for a long moment. Part of me wanted to scream at him, to tell him he'd ruined the rest of my life and an apology wasn't enough. But another part of me, the part that was tired of wrying anger, just wanted to let it go. Thank you, I said. I appreciate that. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said. But I wanted you to know. I nodded. I'm glad you came, Mark. But I think you should go now. He nodded and walked away. I watched him disappear into the crowd, and I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, exactly, but release. The weight I'd been carrying for so long was finally rooting to lift. The rest of the night was a blur of champagne and congratulations. By the time the gallery closed, I'd sold every single painting. Every one. Margaret told me it was one of the most successful openings she'd ever seen. I knew you had it in you, she said. I knew you were something special. I hugged her and thanked her, and then I walked out into the sea of New York night. I called Kevin and told him the news, and he cried on the phone. I cried too. We were both a mess, and it was wonderful that I went back to the hotel and held Leo in my arms. He was awake, his eyes wide, ring at me like he was trying to understand what had just happened. I kissed his forehead and whispered to him. Your mama did something amazing tonight, I said. She faced her fears and she won. And one day, when you're old enough to understand, I'm going to tell you all about it. He sighed and reached up to grab my finger. And in that moment, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. A few weeks later, I got a call from my mother. She was crying, which wasn't unusual, but her voice was different.
Softer.
More vulnerable. Cassidy, she said, I saw the article in the New York Times. I'm so proud of you. I've always been proud of you. I just didn't know how to say it. Mom, I said, I'm not going to pretend everything is fine. It's not, but I'm willing to try. If you're willing to try too. I am, she said. I'm willing. I'll do whatever it takes. And that was the beginning of something new. Not a fairy tale ending, but a real one. A messy, complicated, imperfect ending where everyone was trying to do better. The last thing I did before I left New York was walk through the gallery one more time. The paintings were gone, sold to collectors and museums and people who would treasure them for years to come. But the walls still held the echoes of the stories they'd told. The stories of a woman who'd been broken and put herself back together. A woman who'd faced her demons and won. I touched the wall where my self-portrait had hung. The woman with her face turned tawa RD the light. The woman who'd finally found her voice. And I knew that wherever I went from here, I would RRY her with me. I would RRY the strength she'd given me. I would RRY the hope that I walked out of the gallery and into the sunlight. The city was buzzing around me, full of noise and chaos and beauty. And I was part of it. I was part of all of it. I called Kevin. I'm ready to come home, I said. I'm ready for whatever comes next. Good, he said, because I have something to tell you. Mom and Dad, reselling the house. They're moving to Florida. They asked if you wanted any of the furniture. I laughed. It was such a mundane question, such a normal thing to ask after everything that had happened. Tell them I'll take the dining table, I said. And the china cabinet. And whatever else they want to give me. You got it, he said, and I hung up and walked down the street, feeling the sun on my face and the future stretching out ahead of me. I didn't know what it held, and that was okay. I was ready for it. I was ready for all of it. Because I had rened something in the past few months. Something that couldn't be taken away. I had rened that I was strong. I had rened that I was worthy. And I had rened that no matter how many times life knocked me down, I would always get back up. And that was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything.